Warning: the video you are going to watch now is part of a thesis and an essay. Almost nothing that will be said has the official signature of astronomical science. So, when it comes to new and purposeful ideas, you can include this video in the field of science fiction. The author. For those who watch the Images of the Universe series, some themes are difficult to understand. This is a universal problem because, despite the efforts of writers from all over the world to make their cosmological texts more accessible to lay people, many points addressed in physics remain inaccessible. This is the case, for example, with the concept of the future outcome of an event. For this reason, I thought about making the subject more visual, through graphs and explanatory diagrams, with as little text as possible. On page 52 of the book A Brief History of Time, by Stephen Hawking, we find that following graphic. It is possible to notice, in this graph, that the Earth and the Sun would occupy the same moment of time. That is, the present. The light would come from the Sun inside a cone, called from the future. According to Hawking, if the Sun stopped shining now, we would not be able to see the event directly. The observer would still see the Sun shine for 8 minutes. Unlike the observer, even though the Sun is in the present of the universe, it could not know that, as the star does not have a memory. In addition, to be aware of the Sun's death, the observer would need the space to have the messenger, justifying the delay in communicating the event. Although the observer, on Earth, was only aware of the Sun's death after 8 minutes, in his view, the event would manifest instantly. It is that he would not have accessible information about the event before the sunlight reached Earth. If the Sun's death were a runaway truck, the observer would not even have time to write down his license plate. It can be said, in this case, that the beginning of the counting of time, its zero mark, would be placed in the position of the observer, and not in the position of the star, for all purposes. This could be occurring only on the virtual plane, but it would result from the principle of excluding direct access to what would be an observer's future, or within the future outcome of the Sun. This would be expected, because time could not be directly measured in our future. Here we can see the importance of the observer's point of view, because, for him, the future has not yet happened. The absence of measurable time in the future would flatten the Sun's future light cone on a two-dimensional plane. Without time, there would be no measurable movement. In addition, time zero would migrate to the observer's position on Earth. If time could only be measured in his past, it can be suggested that time would be virtually contained in the observer himself, by a principle of excluding direct access to what would be in his future. Then, Stephen Hawking's diagram would be influenced by the observer's point of view. Without knowing the time in the future, the arrow of time seems to be inverted in the observer's position, starting to point continuously to his past. as the observer cannot know the sun's death directly, the 0 point of time is fixed in its position forever. Looking from his new position, assumed in the past, the observer realizes that the sun's present and future, as well as his own present, are the same thing. It is said that the observer looks at the present of the universe always with delay. So, despite continuing in the present, he would have been banned from that place for being dependent on his memory. This keeps the movement of time towards the future, as predicted by science, although, from the point of view of the observer, its arrow seems to point to his own past. The Earth's movement in space would be negative, as it would depend on time in the past. In this case, the Earth would not advance or leave its place, because its movement would not be in space, but in time.